Please give a warm PTA welcome to our friend, Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. Hey, brother.
What's going on, brother? How you feel?
Good to see you, my man.
Thanks so much. Good morning. I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you so much for that kind introduction. Under Otha's leadership, his extraordinary leadership, together with your state leaders and members, the PTA has been a vital force in raising expectations for every single child in this country. You're helping people get the information they need about new and higher learning standards that many states have adopted, and about community eligibility for free meals. And you've helped to raise funds for cash-strapped schools and spotlight the creative arts. And you've been a very thoughtful voice for discipline policies that treat every child fairly. Parents are precious, precious assets in education, and you help our nation's schools to treat them that way. And I join America's educators and families in a heartfelt thank you. So please give President Thornton and all of yourselves a round of applause. As Otha said, I'm first and foremost a dad, and we have a daughter going into the 7th grade and a son going into 5th grade, and they're finishing school actually today. And when I was home Wednesday night before I left for San Antonio, at dinner, my wife and I talked to them about what were their best learning opportunities this school year. What was the most fun, and what did they get the most out of? And it was really interesting and not surprising that it wasn't the traditional sit in a row of 25 or 30 desks and hear a teacher lecture at them. So my son said what he really enjoyed this year was a chance to work a little bit ahead of grade level in math by using technology. And he talked about how fascinating it was to learn how to operate a flight simulator as part of one of his classes. My daughter, who's in 6th grade going into 7th, she talked about the chance to be part of a conventional convention and have that debate. And then to learn about the Civil War, rather than again having a lecture, they had a Civil War day where the students, it's almost like a college level thing where they could pick which class to go to during the day, a bunch of different options. One option was, what was it like to be a child during the Civil War? What were children's role during that time? They had a chance to see the clothing and go to a tent and touch the weapons and experience those things. And then they had a mock trial for Mary Surratt, who was maybe or maybe not an accomplice of John Wilkes Booth. They debated that. They decided she was guilty. But it's those kinds of opportunities that I think are so special. And why are those experiences so important? Because I think all of us as parents want our children to be inspired and challenged. And we want our children to be active participants in their own learning. And here's why this matters so much. Every child, every student deserves an education that will prepare her for the future. And more, success in the real world won't be just about what you know, but what you can do with what you know. It'll be about your ability to make connections among ideas and to communicate them, and to be able to work in diverse groups to create and to analyze and to find solutions to complex problems. It'll be about a child's ability to understand technology not as an end in itself, but as a tool for a task. Yes, knowledge matters, but not in a vacuum. It has to be connected with inquiry and problem solving. Those skills will be precious currency for young people who might change jobs a dozen or more times across their careers. And the best jobs for our children, as columnist Tom Friedman has written about, may actually be jobs that they invent themselves. Fluency with critical thinking, readiness for lifelong learning, that's what will matter. And that's what my wife and I want for our children. And after thousands and thousands of conversations all over the country, I am more convinced than ever that that's exactly what most parents and most teachers want for our nation's children as well. Making that happen at scale for the many and not for the few, that will take real action. And if you remember one thing from what I say today, please make it this: to prepare our children for the real future that they'll face, public education has to change and has to evolve. And there's a growing agreement in this country about what we need to do. There's growing agreement on the results-driven improvements that we can make right now to ensure a truly effective education for every student. There's a growing agreement about how best to prepare every student for success in college, careers, and in life. Those changes have begun in many, many communities throughout this country. But there's also tough work ahead. It won't happen fast enough without the support of people like you who are so committed to our nation's children. So I'm going to lay out what that change looks like and where I think we agree, and I'm also going to ask for your help. This change isn't about pleasant platitudes or airy aspirations. These challenges have been decades in the making, but it's urgent for us to take action now because we all benefit if all students receive an education that truly challenges and motivates them, and we all live with the consequences if they don't. And let me ask you two questions. If I could, please raise your hand if you're better off than your parents were. And it's hard for me to see here. So raise your hand if you're better off than your parents were. Get some sense of the room. A lot of hands. Thank you. The second question, maybe the tougher questions, please raise your hand if you think your kids will be better off than you are today. So, some murmuring there. Some less hands, and quite frankly, around the country, a lot of people wouldn't raise their hands on that second question right now because they're worried that their children won't inherit a better America than the one that we did. And we all want our kids to go further, to have more than we have, to have a secure future. I know that's what my wife and I want. But many people question whether they can deliver on that future for their kids. And as parents, that uncertainty and that worry it sometimes gnaws at us and keeps us awake some nights. Parents see children in places like Germany and Korea and China racing past ours educationally, and they suspect that kids from those countries will be better positioned than ours in a globally competitive economy. These worries are my worries too, and they're backed up by facts. Compared to 1970 and 1990, more young adults today live with their parents and more are poor. Fewer than 1 in 3 high school sophomores from middle-class families and just 1 in 7 from low-income families go on to earn a bachelor's degree. And in the last generation, the average tuition at a public four-year college has more than tripled, while typical family income has barely moved. The statistics shouldn't surprise us. In many ways, the education system we have today was designed for a time when higher education was simply a privilege reserved for the elite. Those days have to end. Other countries have retooled their education systems to meet that challenge, and we are just beginning to. Quality education can no longer be just for the wealthy few. Every student, no matter where they come from, no matter what zip code they live in or what challenges they face, they desperately need and deserve opportunity to truly learn and to be successful. This fall, as we prepare for a new school year, we face a seminal moment in public education. For the first time in our nation's history, our department projects that America's public schools will enroll a majority-minority student body. Our collective future depends on meeting the needs of all students, and particularly those of minority students better. Let me be clear, our challenges are not isolated to the poor or minority students. The absolute fact is that all students, regardless of race or income or geography, must learn at higher levels if we expect to catch up with our international competitors and to pass them by. No one is exempt from the call for educational improvement. We owe it to each and every student to provide her with the best possible skills and preparation for the new global economy. The schools she attends must look as different as her world will. So let's talk about what schools need to look like and what we need to do to make that happen. First, school must be a supportive and a joyful and a safe place. For most of our young people, our schools are absolutely all of those things. But for a tragic number, schools have become a place of deadly violence. A year and a half ago, I thought this country had to have reached a turning point with gun violence in schools. I thought that after the horrific massacre in Newtown, Connecticut, things would never be the same. And sadly, I was dead wrong. Since then, in just the past 18 months, there have been 70 school shootings on our school and college campuses, resulting in 36 deaths, including 22 students and 2 teachers. What ought to shock us and jar us to act has only become more routine. This level of violence and death and heartbreak and devastation of families simply doesn't happen in countries like Japan, in England, in Australia, in Canada. And I refuse to believe that they somehow value their children more than we do, and I promise to work with anyone, anywhere, to keep our children safe and free from fear. Collectively, that's the least that we can do. Ensuring that schools are safe places for children to learn, that's our first job. But let's talk about what learning must look like to get every child ready for an innovation-driven world. To prepare our young people for success in careers and in life, we must prepare all of them for some form of college. That's never been the case before. Why is it today? College does a lot more than prepare young people for work, but the economic facts alone are compelling. In the last generation, pay has climbed substantially for those with a bachelor's degree and more for those with additional degrees, while it's actually fallen for those with only a high school diploma. What does that all mean? According to MIT economist David Autor, a male college graduate who entered the labor force in 1965 could expect to earn $213,000 more over a lifetime compared to someone with just a high school diploma. By 2010, that pay differential reached $590,000. And for women, the college advantage has also more than doubled to $370,000 from $129,000. David Leonhardt, the Pulitzer Prize-winning economics writer, reports that the pay gap between college graduates and everyone else has reached a record high. College grads today earn 98% more per hour. He writes, and I quote, "For all of the real struggles that many young college graduates face, a 4-year degree has probably never been more valuable." In the years ahead, some form of post-secondary degree or credential will serve as the basic entry ticket into this economy. Today, our schools do a pretty decent job of persuading our kids to go to college, but a poor job of preparing them to succeed once they are there. We can't accept that. Every student in America must be prepared to compete with and actually to lead the rest of the world. As people invested in our kids and in our country, everyone here has a shared mission to make sure that every student everywhere receives an effective education. It's a mission that we can all agree on, and it's one that matters immensely. That mission starts with access to high-quality early learning opportunities. We must help our babies enter kindergarten ready to be successful. That's the best investment that we can make. That mission continues with a great school, a school ready for the future. Schools ready for the future share 7 key factors. First, inspiring and effective and well-supported teachers. Second, high standards. Third, engaged parents and families. Fourth, motivated students. Fifth, courageous and committed and accountable leaders. Sixth, a safe and secure classroom environment. And finally, access to modern technology. For the many, many schools that already have the ingredients for success, let's celebrate them and learn from them and empower them to achieve even more. And for schools that need help getting there, let's provide real and meaningful help now, because I think we can all agree so much on what we need to do. Let's start with one huge area of agreement, and that's around teachers. Great teachers and great leaders matter more than anything else in school. I think everyone would agree that we must do more to respect and to reward and to retain them. We have to stand up for great teachers. We have to celebrate them and create pathways and opportunities for them to shape and nurture the next generation of teacher talent. While we know that, as a nation, we don't always act on those beliefs. If we did, we would provide teachers with better resources. We would pay them more, a lot more, and we would train and we would support them better. Doctors and top managers and pro athletes all have access to excellent coaching informed by solid data. They receive top-notch training and ongoing development to hone their skills. Together, let's work to make all those elements the norm in teaching. Better training, better resources, better support, and smarter accountability tied to better information about student progress. Part of great teaching is personalizing instruction, meeting the needs of 30 or more individual students. That's a huge and complex task. Let's make sure teachers have access to the technological tools that can help them meet that challenge, and make sure that student data also remains secure and private. In schools and school systems that are serious about preparing our children for the future, mastery of learning, rather than time spent sitting in a seat for a particular class, will become the deciding factor on when a student is ready to move ahead. That means schools will need better ways to assess students' continual progress. Parents need to know that as well. Parents have the right to know whether their children's schools are in fact teaching them what they need to know, and they deserve better information than what comes from today's simplistic bubble tests. Smarter assessments means providing teachers and students and families more timely and useful information while taking less time out of the school day. Where schools and school districts test excessively, they should cut back. And when schools are spending too much time prepping for tests, they should cut back there as well. Great teaching, that's what leads to real learning and strong results in assessments, not time spent on test prep. Support and evaluation for teachers should take into account student growth and gain as one part of a mix of measures, including things like observations and surveys and portfolios of student work. When asked, parents strongly support that idea. Better information means more thoughtful and targeted and effective support. Nobody gains when school systems treat all teachers as indistinguishable. In fact, such systems actually devalue the critically important and complex work that teachers do every single day on behalf of our children. Schools ready for the future also set high expectations for learning. Thanks in large part to efforts that the PTA led, 43 states will be moving forward this fall with new, higher, and better academic standards that they chose. That's a sea change in the right direction, and I thank you for your leadership. As I travel the country, teachers constantly tell me that higher standards offer an opportunity for them to innovate and to be creative and to focus on critical thinking and problem solving, skills that our children desperately want and need. Yet on standards, misinformation is circulating. So let me just take one quick minute to go through the facts. First, teachers and principals will always decide how to teach and what books to read, everything that happens in the classroom. No bureaucrat in Washington will change that, ever. Second, state leaders, parents, principals, policymakers, and education experts from across the country came together to develop these college and career-ready standards. And third, higher standards of learning give parents more information about how well their neighborhood schools are performing. Change is always hard, and raising the bar is never easy. The transition to higher standards has been difficult in places, and communication and support for teachers has sometimes fallen short. But it's clear to me that principals and teachers who have worked through this transition together are finding enormous rewards and better serving their students. And let me give you just one quick example. A few months ago, I visited Orchard Gardens, a school in Boston that has made an amazing turnaround under an arts-focused turnaround effort. In just a few short years, Orchard Gardens has gone from being one of the worst schools in the city of Boston to a school today that has a waiting list, families trying to get into that school. I talked there with an amazing 8th grade English teacher named Andrew Vega. And Andrew said that the transition to higher standards was tough and was scary at first, but it ultimately opened up huge opportunities for him and his students. In an article he wrote, he said he is now, and I quote, a better and a happier teacher than I've ever been. Of course, students will need more than just the traditional academic skills in English and math and science. They'll need to study history and languages and have high-quality arts instruction. They'll need to be physically active and civically engaged. They'll need to be challenged to work hard, and as parents, we have to support that work ethic. And as parents, we know that grit and resilience and patience and many other skills can have just as great an effect on our students' long-term prospects as their math and reading, their academic skills. Schools ready for the future will help them develop those skills and habits as well. And that work must begin in the early years. There's one more reason we must give every child in America the opportunity to attend high-quality preschool. But it's not enough for our children just to be college ready. They also have to be able to afford to be able to go to college. And college must be in reach for every hardworking family in America. And that's why we're doing all we can to make college more affordable for every student and family. The President and I have put forward a comprehensive college cost agenda to ensure students are not taking on unsustainable debt, and families have the information they need, the transparency to make good decisions. And to keep debt from overwhelming our young people, we are proposing to expand the pay-as-you-earn plan, which caps student loan repayments at 10% of monthly income to all direct loan borrowers. But let me be very clear. We simply can't do this alone. This has to be about shared responsibility and mutual accountability. States must reinvest in higher education. When states cut their investment, universities jack their tuition up. And colleges must do a better job of containing their cost and building cultures that focus not just on access. Yes, access is important, but it's got to be about completion, graduation at the back end. As we move forward, we will constantly strive to be a better partner and to work with the recognition and the clear understanding that what matters most will never, never be ideas that come from Washington. What actually matters most is great, exciting ideas from around the country, putting all these pieces together to build schools that are truly ready for the future. You can see it at places like Leslie County High School in Hayden, Kentucky, a place so rural that some students travel 30 miles just to come to school. In 2010, that high school was ranked 224th out of the state's 230 high schools. Leaders and parents and educators joined forces with extraordinary commitment and a laser-like focus on data. And just a few short years later, today, that school that was ranked 224th is now ranked 16th in Kentucky and graduates 99% of its students. You can see it in Los Angeles at the Incubator School, where teachers blend online and in-person instruction. And coding, which is so important for the jobs of the future, coding is now a core skill taught to all 11-year-olds. I saw it at New York's Harbor School, where students prepare for college and careers simultaneously, learning subjects from marine biology to boat building. And I saw it in El Paso at Trans Mountain Early College High School. Students there, the vast majority low income, Latino, can earn a high school diploma and an associate's degree in 4 years without paying a nickel of college tuition. I visited a biology class there where 13 and 14-year-olds, high school freshmen, are taking college-level classes for college credit. Leadership matters. Opportunity matters. High expectations matter. And nationally, we're seeing the impact of the hard work and commitment of teachers and families and students. Our nation's high school graduation rate today stands at 80%, the highest in our country's history. And I want to thank you so much for contributing to that success. I'm pleased to report that dropout rates are down dramatically. And since 2000, the dropout rate has been cut by more than half for Hispanic students and by more than a third for African American and low-income students. College enrollment has hit a record level as well. Reading and math scores for 4th and 8th graders are at the highest level since the National Assessment of Education Progress, the NAEP exam, began. The improvements that we are seeing should make us all hungry to do more. These big changes are hard, but this is an immensely important moment, not an easy one. Teachers and principals are working to usher in the largest changes our schools have seen literally in decades. If it feels like things are moving fast, well, that feeling is right, because they are. If we can begin to make these improvements now, we owe it to our children to do it, to not wait. Collectively, you have already shown your commitment. You demonstrated every single day, from teaching students to volunteering to help with homework to reading to your children at night. You know what's at stake for them, for our communities, and for our country. And as a nation, we have so much more to do. Our nation needs your help. Our communities need your help, and our children need your help. In conclusion, I ask you to hear my remarks as a call to action. Like your organizational model says, every child needs one voice. I ask you to be a voice for higher expectations and for elevating the teaching profession. I ask you to be a voice for supporting educators as they strive to make their schools ready for the future, to transform them into schools that our students need to succeed. I ask you to continue to work with urgency and with courage to make these important changes a reality for every single child. And I'm excited to do this work together. Thank you so much, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great job, Arne. At this time, Secretary Duncan, we thank you so much for what you do for our nation's children, and just thank you for your support of PTA. We have a couple of questions. We took questions from around the country, and the first question that comes from Yvonne Johnson with Delaware PTA. Where you at, Delaware? Okay, the question is, we here in Delaware are facing the uncertainty of a new assessment that will align with Common Core. Although we support college and career-ready standards, the idea of numerous hours of assessing student weighs on the minds of the parents in our country. As you know, there's a push in some areas to have parents opt out of their state assessment. Secretary Duncan, what does that mean? If parents opt out, will students' progress and growth be measured? What would be the mean for teachers and school districts and students?
Well, again, I always come to these issues just first as a dad, as a parent. And I want to know each year, are my children learning? Are they progressing? Are they getting better? As I said in the speech, we absolutely have schools and districts and states that I think do too much testing. Okay. And when you're doing too much of anything, it's too much, and we need to step back. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end would be like no assessments, opting out. And for me, our children can't opt out of applying for college. They can't opt out of applying to medical school or law school. And having our children not be scared, but actually be comfortable and confident taking assessments, and for us to get important information back makes all the sense in the world. So I think there's a common sense middle ground there. Walking away from assessments, for me, serves our children poorly. Doing too much of it serves our children poorly. Let's work together to try and strike that right balance.
Okay, thank you, sir. Our next question is from Brian Bonner from California. Where are you at, California? Okay, and the question is, when do you see the achievement gap ending? What one factor affecting the achievement gap do you think PTA can play the most significant role in addressing?
That's a huge question I could go on for an hour about. And I think closing achievement gaps, and I refer to them as opportunity gaps. We can't close the achievement gap until we close the opportunity gap. Not one simple thing, but as a nation, quite honestly, I don't think we have been anywhere near serious about closing the gap. And for me, if we're serious about closing the opportunity gap, which contributes to the achievement gap, we have 15,000 school districts in this country. I keep asking, do we have one school district that systemically identifies their hardest working, their most committed teachers and principals and puts them in the most underserved communities, be that inner city, urban, or rural, or remote? And in fact, we know the vast majority of incentives are for our best talent to leave the toughest communities and go work in more affluent areas. And so until we reverse those incentives or those disincentives and put in place incentives to have the hardest working, most committed, most successful adults working with our children, I don't think as a nation we are serious about closing the achievement gap. Give a contrasting story, South Korea, that is eating our lunch in many ways academically. If you're a disadvantaged child in South Korea, you are more likely to be taught by an effective teacher, because at scale, that nation takes this work seriously. So that's one hugely important point. Talent. The second one for me is time. We know children who don't come from weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth, who in the summer aren't going to museums and libraries and ballet classes. Longer days, longer weeks, more summer school. Summer school is not a penalty. When kids are behind, they need more time, more instruction. So thinking very differently about how we use time, not for every child, but for children who need more help, I think that's huge. And the final one I'll come back to is technology. And this idea of kids learning 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, 9 months a year just doesn't make sense. Technology can drive both an equity and an excellence agenda. And if children, again, inner city Chicago or LA or Detroit or a rural community or Native American reservations where I've been spending a fair amount of time, if they can learn anything they want, anytime, anywhere, foreign languages, AP classes their schools may not offer, that starts to level the playing field. So talent, time, technology, and again, what frustrates me and where I feel a huge sense of urgency, I don't know if we have a district out of 15,000 that at scale is doing what it takes to actually close the achievement gap.
Okay, well, thank you, Secretary Duncan. We really appreciate your time. Let's give him another round of applause.